Is that why people are losing their jobs to AI? Because it's less profitable? Because it's less valuable? That is why companies are rehiring their human workers, because they realized AI can't replace workers like they thought it could. As I said in my prior video, it can augment but not replace. Is that why artists are furious that AI is causing a noticeable drop in commissions? Because it provides nothing of value? Artists are pissed that the work they spent hours or days making is being stolen without paying for said work, in some cases mimicked as well. And now I ask, would you want your hard work stolen to then be replicated? Of course not. The reality is that AI is the next generation's computer. In a weird way, you're wrong, but also right at the same time. In fact, I hope these investors keep dumping money into AI infrastructure, and the longer they do this, the better. Because when the bubble finally pops, these investors are going to need to recoup some of their losses, which means selling the hardware to consumers, whether it be the CPUs or the memory. GPUs are a little more complex, as data center GPUs don't have video output ports, so it would need to be repurposed somehow. But anyway, the longer the bubble keeps getting inflated, the more hardware will be sold for cheap when it finally bursts. When computers were still new but publicly available and people were starting to get their hands on them, what did many say? Oh right, it's not going to take over how we do things in business. When computers were new, they were sold as individual products to consumers, and the same thing applies to phones and smartphones as well. Unlike AI, it doesn't require an entire data center or a 500-watt GPU that costs $2,000 if you're running your model locally. And also, when computers first came out, if I recall from what I've seen, $2,000 is what some of them cost for the whole machine, and now we're talking about just the GPU. Now we could get into inflation over the years, however wages have also stagnated over the years as well, so pick and choose your demons here. Nobody needs digital when we have analog. Nobody needs to type things when we can write. Nobody needs to digitally catalog when we have filing cabinets. No point in learning how to work with computers because it's not going to be a useful skill. This argument literally makes no sense. If there was no point in learning how computers work, then who would build out the data centers for AI and make sure all the software was set up for the models to run and manage said data centers? Because what are data centers filled with? Computers. So what I hear you saying is that in your perfect world, the computers manage themselves and build their own infrastructure. I don't know about you, but I can imagine some serious problems with this, on top of it sounding pretty dystopian. If you have concerns about the course of AI, you need to get on board with its development. Otherwise, only the people developing them are going to be the people who have concerns about running everything. They might have meant ruining everything here, I don't know. What I also don't know is how to break this to you. I have been in development of AI myself, with me writing my own damn framework using Python and Cuppy. Ignore the reference errors, I did an OS reinstall a while ago and plan on rewriting everything anyway. And I made this framework for 3 reasons. 1. I found implementing custom layers in PyTorch extremely difficult. 2. I wanted to be able to see exactly what was happening within my model at a glance, given I already had prior knowledge of matrix multiplication, and due to the way PyTorch hides things away confusing me. And 3, which is a combination of the first 2, PyTorch pissed me off. So if you don't understand all of this, that's fine. Here's the short version. I built AI and have an understanding of how it works all the way down to the math. But AI isn't the only thing I have an understanding of. Just take a look at the thumbnails on my channel and where I started about 8 months ago to where I am now. Now I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm amazing at art because I'm not, but constantly trying to improve at it gave me an appreciation for art that I didn't have before because of the amount of work it took me to get to this point. And for those who know how to draw and can actually make an art piece like drawing, sculpting, or making something that has shape, I can see the amount of skill and effort it took to get to that point when starting from zero. That's where my appreciation comes from, not necessarily from the piece itself, but the work behind it. Now since I'm on the topic of AI, let's talk about AI coming into games, and how it should almost certainly be taken as a sign that a game is going to be bad. Now there are various ways AI can be implemented in a game, some of which you've seen already, such as various upscalers. However, I want to focus on the ones being talked about, which are the generating of textures for a game, AI being used for NPCs and dialogue, or even generating the entire game. First off, the generation of textures for a game kind of circles back to the art section, but another component here is, when artists make something, it's roughly in how they envision it. Ever heard of the term an artist's interpretation? That's where it comes from. A human will make their own unique interpretation of what they envision, while an AI will just mash a bunch of ones and zeros together and give you something. This is why artists say AI art has no character or is soulless, because there's no interpretation or uniqueness associated with it, showcasing that it is. And on top of that, in a game context, you need to make sure that all the textures aesthetically match and go together in a coherent fashion. While technically possible for AI to do, you would need to add some of those already generated textures back into the input to make sure everything was coherent. However, doing so could lead to some undesirable results and artifacts. As they say, garbage in, garbage out. Now we have the aspect of using AI for NPCs. What most people don't seem to understand is how much compute it takes to run an AI model. So let me put this into perspective. While the GPU core is utilized, the biggest component used in machine learning is the GPU memory, some of which require 40 gigabytes to run depending on the model used, or the system memory if you're doing it with the CPU instead of the GPU. But in the case with CPUs, the CPU gets hit just as hard as it's not as optimized for AI compute as the GPU is. Anyway, when you're playing a game, your goal is to direct your system resources to that game to play it. So when you run an AI model for, let's say, just one NPC, you're taking compute away from the game to run that model. And if the model runs on the GPU, you'll sacrifice graphical fidelity for that. Or if the model hits your GPU memory hard enough, expect frame drops for your game as well. In a weird way, this was already showcased by hardware reviewers like Hardware Unboxed, as seen in their video of how much VRAM do gamers actually need, showcasing this. However, there is always the other option for these AI NPCs. What if it just ran in the data center and not on my machine locally? Well, while you would keep your high graphic fidelity and your high frame rates, the data center compute still comes with a cost. In this case, physical cost, usually on a monthly basis. So the option for the company would be to either eat the cost or make the game a subscription. Since people seem to love subscriptions so much, now you can actually subscribe to play one game. Cause we both know that the company isn't just going to eat the data center costs. Last I checked, they're in the business of making money. And the game would be always online because it needs to contact the data center at the very least in this case. Now compare that to if a game was made with good storytelling and dialogue for NPCs. It would be less resource intensive, meaning better FPS and graphical fidelity, or it wouldn't require an active internet connection and subscription to play the game. Basically, just simply a better game. And now we have the final one, the entire game being generated by AI, which is all the previous issues mentioned earlier mashed together to really give you the AI experience.